Hi, my name is Miles Schofield, and welcome to another AOPEN Tech Flash. Today we're talking about EV charging, and specifically EV charging kiosks. Why are we talking about EV charging kiosks? It's because AOPEN makes industrial controllers and media players, and so we basically make the brains that go inside these things. So today we're talking, of course, about the consumer use case, right? We're not talking about, the trucking market or people who drive for a living and things like that. We're, of course, going to review the consumer EV car market and then talk about the kiosks themselves, and then my predictions for the industry as a whole. So the first thing when we talk about EV cars is really, have they reached that break point where people feel secure in the range, right? And so the answer is, of course, yes, right? Top three models right here, you can see that, they're 260, 300, sometimes more. But when we look at how much Americans actually drive, it's about, their commute's 16 each way, 32, right? Total 39, which means you're driving to and from work, maybe a little bit extra to pick up dinner, right? And so when we look at that, let's say 260, even 200, you'd have to basically not plug in your car for 4 days in order to even worry about anything. Right. So as long as you're driving home and you have some sort of at-home solution to charge your car slowly overnight and top it off effectively, then, why do you need a kiosk? The answer is probably you don't for a consumer market. But the issue is that even though it's relatively straightforward, easy math, 50% of people, you can see right here, have what's called range anxiety, which means that they're scared that they're going to run around of juice, electricity, while just doing their day-to-day driving, which, as I just noted, is pretty impossible, right? And so, this is a real anxiety, though, which is going to prevent people from and slow down the adoption of EV vehicles. And there's even sort of advanced solutions to sort of assuage these feelings, right, with these sort of portable battery packs, which are effectively like putting a tank of gas in the back of your car. Pretty much the exact same thing, and that same type of people would use that solution to gain confidence in that type of scenario, right? But of course, the market as a whole is still going up. There's always hesitations about new technology, and no matter how you slice it, this chart varies from whoever you look. Predicting the future is difficult. Bloomberg has it at 35%, 20 years. Some people have it sooner. It all depends on what the government does in terms of incentives and subsidies and et cetera, et cetera. Energy is a very important part of the U.S. economy. You know the deal. It's complicated, but I think we can all agree that everyone's getting into this market and it's going to be growing, right? So let's talk about the charges themselves, right? So you have two basic types. You have the ones that look like parking meters, and then you have the ones with screens, maybe a payment, maybe they're showing you something, right? And you have the big players. You have Electrify America, EVgo, ChargePoint, EV Connect, Volta. Of course, you got Tesla. I didn't put them in there because everyone, you know it anyway. So what do these kiosks do? They charge your vehicle. They provide power. Key thing here, though, in terms of the industry, though, is that it's not proprietary, right? Any kiosk maker can make an EV charging kiosk, right? So what all these companies basically need to solve in terms of their business plan is, what value do we bring when anyone can actually make this product effectively, right? And so it's all about what type of places you own, your footprint, the amount of stations, how well laid out and organized if you have a payment sort of thing or a usage plan. All this stuff is sort of very important to these type of companies because it's not the hardware tech that's actually proprietary at all. Second thing is, the reason why these kiosks are so simple is because all the car charging tech is on the car side, right? So the plug's the same except for the Tesla, right? And the cars each individually have to deal with maintaining the battery, right? So all the fancy stuff in terms of the kiosk just provide power, the car itself needs to determine charging rate and how much juice it uses and, maintaining the connection, make sure it doesn't, overflow, things like that. All that is on the car side, right? The last thing to note about EV charging stations and their use is, which can also contribute to that range anxiety, is that your battery does drain constantly to maintain optimal temperature. So if you're parked at work all day in minus 20 degrees in Chicago or Ottawa, right? Or if you're parked in Arizona outside your office building, in 110 degree heat, your battery is going to be draining to try and maintain temperature of your battery because heat actually degrades the longevity of your battery, right? right? So it's very not only important for your range, but important for how long your battery lasts to have it maintained by an intelligent system in your vehicle, right? And so when we talk about that range anxiety and how these kiosks will be used, that's actually an important part, is that you're going to need some sort of charging station if you're in a variable temperature zone to basically feed your car if you're at work and things like that. So let's talk about the chargers themselves, just the tech. So you can see 1, 2, and 3. 1 and 2 are measured in hours, and 3 is in minutes. So the main thing we're talking about, obviously, is when we're talking about retail chargers versus a charger where your car would sit there all day, is that level 1 and 2 is out for retail charger. They're never going to get anywhere close to acting like a gas station, right? But you can see level 3, there's a big range, 3 to 20 per minute. So let's say that's 10. Maybe they get it to 15 over the next 10 years, right? You can see that almost would line up with a typical retail experience. So gas station, 4.5 if you pay at the pump. Well, if you got 15 to 20, right, that's 45 miles, maybe 60 miles that you would get in the same time. It's probably not enough. Even if you had the full 20, you're barely pushing 100, and most people would want to fill up probably if they were on a road trip to 200, which means you're going to be sitting there for probably 10 15 minutes, right? If you want to mimic a gas station, right? Grocery store is much easier, 41 minutes. That's plenty of time to get a quote unquote full tank or full battery charge. Drive-through is another one that's similar to gas station, 4.5 minutes if you're not in the line, right? Dining out's plenty of time too. So you have these two different scenarios you're trying to basically mimic. A gas station, a drive-through, both around 4 or 5 minutes, and then you have grocery store, dining out, going to see a movie, blah, blah, blah. All these things are right around an hour, maybe 2 hours. That gives you plenty of time if you got a level 3 charger, right? So what I think is basically going to happen is if level 3 charging can get to the point where it's 15, 20, that the larger, more interactive kiosks where you can probably order things from your phone are going to be used in those sort of quick type of scenarios. So at a gas station, a drive-through, grocery store, dining out, all those things are going to be using larger kiosks, which are trying to get you to do something, right? So imagine a gas station, you pull in there, it's more of like a Sonic style, where you pull up and they have sort of a board. Instead of going into the store, you can buy things from the store and they bring it out to you, right? So this will really have to do with how the footprint handles at these sort of gas stations, how they incorporate this technology. Because they want you to buy the high margin items inside, but if they can have you order from your car, then obviously that's a massive incentive. So you can see that there's sort of like a trade-off that will happen in this market, whether or not you want to try and incentivize people to go in or have them hang out by their car. You've seen those Shell stations with the advertising built into the pump. Same sort of concept, right? Let's talk about the predictions. So just as I just mentioned, the retail stay or go is going to be a push and a pull. If people want you to stay in your car to order, if you're picking up this sort of, the Sonic style, if you're going to McDonald's, you pull into a stall. If you pull in a grocery store, you pull into a stall while you wait for your groceries to be delivered. If you pull in a gas station, you pull in a little stall and you can order things from the store, et cetera, et cetera. If this whole sort of you stay in your car and have things delivered to you, then the larger kiosk is going to be used to try and basically impact your behavior, right? However, if they go big and they still want you to go in, walk around, it's less likely because that's not the trend we're seeing. Then the smaller ones will be used because if you only look at them for 5 seconds, they're sort of a waste, right? Same thing for government enterprise. They're obviously not going to be trying to get your attention. They're probably going to look like those parking meter ones, right? Because why do they need to have a massive reason to be huge and get your attention, right? So when it's not trying to get your attention, not trying to get your business, then the ones that look like parking meters, it seems pretty straightforward. So that we're looking at if your commute involves like a light rail or a subway or any sort of where you're going to be parked outside in a lot with a whole bunch of other commuters, or if you're parked in an office building, like I said, that constant drain will need a type 1, 2 type meter just to keep your car topped off during the day because of extreme weather conditions, right? Those one can just be little parking meters. It's no big deal. The last sort of thing that may massively disrupt this industry is, of course, what are the gas stations going to do? The gas stations have already gotten involved. I clipped this from the bottom. Shell has over 500,000, which is way more than all the other brands I mentioned, but they're counting home chargers, right? So how and when the gas stations decide to get into these markets because of their massive footprint and how many stations they have and the amount of influence, they could completely change everything, right? The main thing that I know is that, as you can see here, that's 500,000, right? A lot of them are home chargers. And like I said, as long as you remember to plug in your car, you're probably going to be fine just on day-to-day operations. So what I think is the real market is going to be, of course, chargers for your home that are easy to install, easy to use, never break, and more importantly, remind you to plug them in, because I think most people will run out of charge if they just forget, right? And so they're going to have to develop habits and things like that. Right. Whereas charging kiosks and stuff like that out in the wild at sort of like McDonald's and QSRs, Burger Kings and Whole Foods will be fancier, trying to direct your retail behavior. So anyway, I hope you found this interesting. Till next time, my name is Miles Schofield. Thanks for joining.